So, a reading from Hebrews chapter 4, beginning to read at verse 14. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has gone through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet was without sin. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Every high priest is selected from among men and is appointed to represent them in matters related to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He is able to deal gently with those who are ignorant and are going astray, since he himself is subject to weakness. This is why he has to offer sacrifices for his own sins as well as for the sins of the people. No one takes this honour upon himself. He must be called by God, just as Aaron was. So Christ also did not take upon himself the glory of becoming a high priest, but God said to him, "You are my son, today I have become your father." And he says in another place, "You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek." During the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with loud cries and tears to the one who could save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverent submission. Although he was a son, he learned obedience from what he suffered, and once made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation for all who obey him, and was designated by God to be high priest in the order of Melchizedek. Do you ever imagine yourself dragged into a courtroom? You're dragged in there by Satan. It happens every day. Your life is weighed down by guilt and shame. You believe you're not loved by God. God is in the judge's seat. Satan is making the case for the prosecution, and it's the same one every day. He accuses you of wrongdoing, and you know that there is truth in the accusation. It weighs you down. You're filled with anxiety. Who will be counsel for your defence? Jesus rises. He is your counsel. And he says you are one of his people. Your sin, all the things Satan is accusing you of, have been paid for by his sacrifice. And so Satan's power to prosecute is destroyed. You are free. No more anxiety. You can know peace. You never have to stand in the court again with your guilt and shame. That's what this chapter is about. This chapter is showing us that Jesus is the greatest high priest. Priesthood was a big deal in the Old Testament. The people couldn't come to God without a priest who would make sacrifices on their behalf, atonement. And after he had first made sacrifices for his own sin, the high priest was the only one who was allowed to enter the most holy place to make that atonement. Now remember, the original readers were Jewish. They would have understood this. And it was in that most holy place, or the tent of the meeting, or the tabernacle, different words, where the golden box known as the Ark of the Covenant was kept. Exodus chapter 26, verse 34. Think back to Raiders of the Lost Ark. And it was the place where God chose to meet the high priest. Exodus 25, verse 22. Verse 14, we read, Jesus meets with God in the heavens on behalf of his people to make atonement for sins, just as the high priest met with God in the most holy place. Now again, remember, these readers were facing persecution and suffering and being tempted to give up and return to Judaism. But the writer reminds them and us that Jesus can empathize with us. Verse 15. He's able to provide mercy and grace to help with their suffering. Available if they will just come to the throne of grace and ask for it, knowing that Jesus sympathizes with them in their weakness because he himself has been tempted. You see, if Jesus had given in to temptation, he would have sinned and wouldn't have been able to atone for us. He wouldn't have been able to stand in our place as a perfect substitute without sin of his own. So he suffered on our behalf. And this would give the people courage to approach the throne and find help to strengthen them. And the same invitation is open to us. Help when we need it. So, the writer says, hold firm despite temptation and persecution. And that means spend time in prayer, maybe with a prayer partner, part of a prayer triplet. Request prayer from others, email, text, WhatsApp groups. And of course, offer to pray for others. So this great high priest has met with God on our behalf. He's taken our sin on himself. And he's made it possible for us to approach the throne of God ourselves and to ask and receive the help we need. We don't need a human priest today, since Jesus fulfilled the role of high priest once and for all, enabling us to leave that courtroom free of guilt, free of shame, free of anxiety, knowing we're loved by God and able to face the future, the rest of our lives, with confidence and hope. Jesus, the greatest high priest.